Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. After resetting to factory defaults, my Verizon 5G home internet ultimate router for like the 50th time, oh, that's an exaggeration, I still have a very low bit rate, for whatever reason. You probably hear my fan in the background. I think I have it. There it is. It's on the lowest setting, so it shouldn't be a problem. My mic is way over here. I don't know why my internet is so slow. But I'm gonna work on that. I have a lot of reviews to get through because there were 3 movies I've seen, and I'll show you real quick. We've got The Death of Robin Hood, and these are of course films that not only did they premiere this past weekend, but also kind of betted on their performance to reach a certain Rotten Tomatoes score. And I'll have to refresh each and every Rotten Tomatoes tab just because to get the current score. Like the current score for The Death of Robin Hood. And I'm gonna go ahead and check Kalshi because that's the app that I use. That's also the sponsor of this video. By the way, I'm gonna thank Kalshi for sponsoring this video. Yeah, so, or live stream, I should say. So, looking at the current score for The Death of Robin Hood, this movie stars Hugh Jackman. He also produced the movie. This is a drama. Wow, it dropped to 68% of all critics. It's not a great movie. It's not. I'll tell you that firsthand. It was rather long, convoluted. I barely understood it because admittedly I didn't really pay full attention. I actually fell asleep during some of the movie. Kind of like I saw another movie today. Just today I saw Young Washington. And I must say that movie is not at all great. It is just as bad as you could think it is. It's another war movie. I'm actually disappointed that I saw it, but then again, A-list, whenever you go to see Screen Unseen, that's AMC Theaters mystery movies, it's not really, you don't have a choice in what the movie's going to be. You do pay for the ticket, but it is just that. It is a mystery movie. Yeah, so, and this is the IMDb page. This is the trailer. My bad. Just want to make sure everything is being displayed right. Anyway, so it's essentially about, and I'm looking at the other screen. Traveling with his past after a life of crime and murder, Robin Hood finds himself gravely injured after a battle he thought it would be his last. In the hands of a mysterious woman, aka a nun, he is offered a chance at salvation because apparently his past, his past is, he's getting old, he's reaching death's door, and he's thinking about his past. Like all good Oz white men. Yeah, I am slightly wasted. This is the cast. You have Hugh Jackman as Robin, Judy Comer is assistant Bridget, and then Bill Skarsgård as Edward. Yeah, I didn't expect to even see Bill Skarsgård in this, but he's in it. Then you have, let me move my mic closer. Then we have, well, yeah, that's all that's noteworthy right there. Anyway, so we're gonna get into the reviews and we're gonna see what people think. Starting with Jeremy Johns.
So The Death of Robin Hood's written and directed by Michael Sarnowski, stars Hugh Jackman as Robin Hood. Though this isn't your parents' Robin Hood, no. That crush the boomer moms had on Kevin Costner's... This is not the same guy. This is a deconstruction of the character of Robin Hood. What if Robin Hood killed and robbed people because he, well, liked it? Then he gets wounded, hangs out in this monastery so he can think about what he's done. All right, first of all, what I liked about the movie, I liked the overall nihilistic ass tone of the whole thing. I mean, it sounds weird to say, but the movie did have a dark tone to it that not everyone's gonna like, but there was something visceral and real about it that did hook me. Right down to some of the killings and the deaths in this movie, they're hard to watch, and you're not supposed to like that. That's kind of how it's supposed to be, watching someone die. That gets lost a lot in cinema. Not for this movie. This movie takes a fair swing at making death uncomfortable to watch. So props, well executed on that. Also, the actors clock into work. I mean, Hugh Jackman's a professional, no doubt. He's playing the worn out old man version of an iconic character. I mean, either very ironically or unironically so here. Though with Wolverine, there was still a sense of a moral compass. This Robin Hood...
And how many people are going to reference Wolverine, do you think? They're going to mention Wolverine every single fucking time. Now, I'm not going to lie, I didn't think about this. I didn't think about Wolverine while I was watching the movie. But afterwards, I thought about with the long hair and it being gray hair, I thought about both Wolverines. The Wolverine and the Wolverine at the beginning of the movie when he's got that beard and long hair. He's still got his black hair, but he's obviously not an old man. He's not old man Logan. He doesn't become old man Logan until Logan. And making sure my door's closed. During that movie, he's got, of course, got short hair.
It's just an asshole. No other way to say it. Jodie Comer is the woman who runs, unironically so here. Though with Wolverine, there was still a sense of a moral compass. This Robin Hood's just an asshole. No other way to say it. Jodie Comer is the woman who runs this monastery where he's healing up. I thought she was great too. I mean, she doesn't have a lot to do in here. In fact, there are a couple things I wish they had committed to it being an actual moral dilemma, or at the very least, consequences in general, any sort of tension. Wasn't really there though. Now when I talk about battles, blood, death, hard to watch, you might get the false sense that this movie has more momentum than it actually does. To be fair, for the first half, we'll call it the first hour of this movie, I was locked in, priming you with the grit and visceral brutality of hand-to-hand combat. Everyone's depressed, everything sucks, then he gets wounded, he's chilling out in this monastery, and now he's gonna think about it. You feel the emotional weight of the sins of the past, where to go from here, and there's that general sense of people he has wronged, their families are coming after him, and then he kills them, and their families come after him, and where does it end? But because it doesn't stick the landing on that, the second half of this movie, as it said, slow burn just becomes slow. See, slow burn's only slow burn when it sticks the landing. If it doesn't, you kind of have what this movie's second half is. To be fair, the movie does a good job at illustrating the reality of the situation is, hey, the action stuff, that was for the setup. I didn't expect any more action, I just expected more payoff. There are some sweet character moments here and there, but the biggest hook is the fact that this is a deconstruction of Robin Hood. And granted, while I don't feel like he's gonna be hanging out on the island of character assassination with Jake Skywalker, which to be fair, there are ballads out there that do paint Robin Hood as an asshole, but making this character Robin Hood as he's at the end of his life just kind of feels like a gimmick. You don't deal with enough of the Robin Hood world to make this feel like it's justifiably Robin Hood. Feels like a magic trick so audiences can watch this and the character of Robin Hood's famous enough to where they can fill in the backstory. It's that backstory, but it's a darker version of it, which all would have been fine. They stuck the emotional landing, but they really didn't. He is Robin Hood, but he's a different enough version of Robin Hood from what audiences would know. But I personally needed more to get behind this apparent murderous maniac's redemption arc. There was some good stuff in here for sure, but it does feel like this movie was made for critics. There's some movies out there, let's be honest. You ever walk out of a movie and be like, was this made just so critics will gush about it on Rotten Tomatoes? I mean, it doesn't look like that's working out, but you ever walk out of a movie feeling like that? This movie kind of made me feel like that. This is just
because the story is hard to follow. It's got a very mature vibe. Like, you literally have to be paying attention.
Wait, hold up. You guys know I love a good game, right? Well...
Sorry, and thinking about it. You have to actually be thinking about it, paying attention. If you go to the bathroom, you might get lost. But it's very slow. It doesn't make it clear about what the movie is even about. Maybe if you watch it a second or third time, you'll get it. But it's like, sorry, I'm thinking about something else. I'm sorry. I'm a little autistic. Yeah, it's why you have to think about it and like I think I might have Tourette's. I don't know. Is that possible? Anyway, yeah, like you said, it's just slow and it's hard to follow this movie, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, what's the catch? What am I supposed to get out of this movie? Is this like a life lesson? Or it's like somebody wants to. It's kind of like me. I'm not getting on to the point. You see, I'm just babbling on. That's what this movie does. It babbles on. It doesn't get to the point. I don't understand what the point of it is. Anyway, let him finish.
Apparently a story that's far more interesting in concept.
And the reason why I did that flip off is because I'm watching a video on my phone. That's why I muted it. Because I'm doing like this thing called Just Play, which is like a play to own apps. And I'm constantly seeing this woman. She's pointing like this, like, check out this app. You know how people tell you to click the link below? Or if they do like this, they point. I'm like, at this point, I'm just kind of like this. Because I hate seeing her on it. I'm tired of seeing the same ad. Sorry. Didn't know that was on screen.
Then execution. Everything good about this movie was in the first half. Wait for it to come out on streaming, watch the first half, then stop. I don't really use that rating that much, but damn if that's not exactly how I would tell people to go about this one. The biggest bummer and feeling, but damn, far more interesting in concept than execution. And it made me feel like that. This is just apparently a story that's far more interesting in concept than execution. Everything good about this movie was in the first half. Wait for it to come out on streaming, watch the first half, then stop. I don't really use that rating that much, but damn if that's not exactly how I would tell people to go about this one. The biggest bummer and feeling like not a lot of people are even going to care about this movie is the fact that I don't feel like anybody's going to care enough to edit the footage from the death of Robin Hood and edit it to that romantic Bryan Adams banger song from Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. It'd be pretty awesome. Alright, so the death of Robin Hood. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Or what's your favorite character deconstruction? Or your favorite Robin Hood? Just keep it simple, I suppose. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.
See, click right here, right? Click right here. Yeah, always click here. Let's go forward.
Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing The Death of Robin Hood. This was directed by Michael Sarnowski. Sarnowski is an American filmmaker and he has a couple of feature films under his belt at this point. I did review his first feature entitled Pig, and that starred Nicolas Cage, a film that I was not nuts about, but I also saw that there was a lot of talent and potential for future projects. And with The Death of Robin Hood, I was intrigued by it because it seemed more ambitious than Pig, and it follows a similar structure and philosophy, a sort of dismantling or a deconstruction of the hero mythos. As the title suggests, this is a movie about Robin Hood, but it's more of an anti-Robin Hood film in a way, because this is not Robin Hood and his merry men that you might be more acquainted with. This is a more battered, hardened, and cynical version of Robin Hood, and this time he's played by Hugh Jackman. In this version of the story, Robin Hood is older. He is in the third act of his life, and he is very disconnected from himself. He is withered away by a lot of the violence and the pain that has twisted him into a monster over time. It's a very dark, brooding version of Robin Hood, and it has this sort of Americana Gothic quality to it, and I really love the ethereal folk quality to the music and the aesthetic. The look of the film is striking. There are beautiful sweeping shots of the Irish countryside, and I think the film wants to give the vibe that it is very artsy overall, and it's slow moving by choice and very attuned to the sounds and textures of nature. The opening of the film wants to convey, I think, the nature of this brutal, hellish world so that it can be contrasted with a more ethereal, more meditative second half of the film. And the film doesn't rile up as it goes, as we might be used to. Instead, it kind of lulls into a calmer mood. The movie does commit to the meditative pacing and the melancholy tone, which I do appreciate. I think Jodie Comer gives maybe the best performance in the movie, and I think she's just incredible in everything that she does. In the second half of the movie, she has to represent this idea of feminine strength that is meant to soften the hero, but she also provides a sense of grace and intelligence and awareness. I've always liked Hugh Jackman as a presence, of course. I think a lot of people do. We all know him as Wolverine, so we know that he's really...
So it is nice to hear she liked the movie. Notice she doesn't say that for whatever reason she chose. You could have just started off with that. With Miss, I always forget names. I'm sorry. Hold on just a second. Let me get into some, deep focus lens. Never gives her real name, but she just doesn't tell you. She does tell you, but she should just led with "I like this movie," or at least included it somewhere within the first 30 seconds. You know, you don't have to go all in and just talk shit and just say you liked it, you didn't like it, and then tell us why. You know, but she's a little complicated by choice, like this movie. Yeah, there's a lot of hate for the upcoming Supergirl. It comes out this week, and I'm gonna hate on these haters, like, because they're trying to destroy this movie as it's about to come out. The same thing that they did with they started doing this with Snow White that came out last year. That did come out last year, right? Just joking, it did. That's when they started doing this whole trend of destroying films before they came out, and then they did it after. Then they did it with another movie. I forgot the title. I know they did it with Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Some people even did it with Toy Story 5 here, saying it's woke, and just because Jesse is the main character and has more screen time than Woody. You know, so anyway, I digress. I gotta watch that. Yeah, I love Scoob. It's fucking hilarious. Yeah, anyway, watch that. But this is. I mean, so people go about how it sounds instead of what it is. They have not seen the movie. What I'm saying is Supergirl hasn't come out yet, and people like this, like Computing Forever, he's only going by what people have said, what other reviewers have said, people like Nerdwatic and the Critical Drinker, and none of them have seen it. I don't think anybody should be allowed to see movies so early on. They should not get early releases, and you shouldn't get early releases of video games, but more on that later.
Really good at turning on the grimace and the rage when he
not bad.
He needs to, but the sincerity, the earnestness always comes through. But to me, I wish that he had developed maybe a little bit more of a character here that differentiates itself from Wolverine, because as it stands, it felt just a little too similar. When I think about this film and I compare it to Pig, his first film, I think that this is a better film, but I struggle with similar problems as I did
How about you stop comparing it to other films and just talk about this one?
With Pig. This one is very traditional and archetypal in a lot of ways, yet it is consciously subversive. But there is a lack of probing within that subversive tactic to me, and thus it makes the film feel slow and sometimes just dull, and I don't think it breathes enough life into this modern, more edgy perspective on the character for it to feel vital and present. The original Robin Hood is an adventure, and so it's clever, it's rousing, and yes, I know that this one is meant to take an opposite approach, but I think it loses something due to the lack of conviction in the writing for me. Yes, the movie movie is beautiful to look at, and the aesthetic wants to give off the feeling of heft and weight, this aching in the joints, and it is quite effective at that. But to me, the surface nature of the material overall makes all of this feel unearned and hollow. It's like it might appear to be really deep. Rooted into the ground, and it might fool you for a while there, but a simple breeze, I think, could knock the whole thing over and it floats away like a paper bag. I think you can create a brooding mood without it verging on one note. And again, there is talent and there is a lot of taste here, but it starts to feel a little bit on the soggy side, a little bit drab. And the seriousness of it verges on camp, but all of that felt misplaced in my opinion. I wanted more complex ideas to fill the silences of this movie, because there are a lot of silences here, and that's not a bad thing, but there is a lack of development when it comes to the themes of redemption through peace, love versus violence, etc., and it makes a lot of those big silent shots feel empty. This film is minimalist to a fault, and it's frustrating because nothing sticks emotionally. There were so many times in this movie where it's like I could feel something forming inside so far as my connection to it, and yet it never materializes. There is this whole thesis in the movie when it comes to the concepts of legends that are passed down from generation to generation throughout history, and what gets lost in translation through time, and what we romanticize just to carry us through life. But it doesn't do that much with this idea, so in the end I just feel confused as to what the film is trying to say, ultimately. It's straining for depth, but it's like it's pandering with a very simplistic narrative and the thematic ideas of it, and that's a shame because, like I said, I think there are some very pure creative instincts here. There are some good performances here, and there's artistry here that absolutely works. It's just overall, it's a little bit reductive for me as a project, and it's a slog. The old Johnny Cash sort of battered cynicism, I think it needs a little bit of spark, a little bit of fire under its ass for this thing to really touch a nerve with an audience. I wish the film had a more fundamental understanding of its themes so that it could do a little bit more with them overall. Yes, I know that I am harping on this film a lot, but I do think that it is interesting, and I think it is worth checking out. I wouldn't do it for a date night. This might be more of a matinee if you're into this sort of thing, or maybe a stream. If you liked a movie like Logan, which is obviously the other Hugh Jackman film, very similar to this one, but it is about Wolverine, then this might be of interest to you because it's hard not to compare the two films. I personally prefer Logan. It feels more fully formed as an overall piece, but like I said, this one has merit at times. It's just frustrating. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commissioned portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is
You know, on the surface level, another Robin Hood movie actually sounds like a horrible idea. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking at this point, what could possibly be said about the character of Robin Hood that would justify a movie like this's existence? Well, I'm happy to report that The Death of Robin Hood is proof that a reinvention of a classic story or character is possible in the right hands. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
So, pretty please, with sugar on top. Clean the car.
The Death of Robin Hood is a dark, revisionist version that follows an injured Robin Hood as he seeks refuge and begins to grapple with his violent past while forming a bond with a nun and a young girl. So almost immediately, as you sit down to watch this movie, it becomes abundantly clear that you are not in for a typical Robin Hood swashbuckling adventure.
No shit.
In a lot of ways, this feels like the more gritty and serious take on the character that Ridley Scott wanted to accomplish with his Robin Hood movie. Only I felt like that movie was lacking a certain something to push that movie over the top.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
But in The Death of Robin Hood, you almost get more than you bargained for. It subverts your expectations in such an extreme and good way that for me at least, I couldn't help but get completely immersed in this film. I mean, I was genuinely locked in from start to finish, which is not easy to accomplish when you take such a methodical approach to storytelling. This movie is very much a slow burn. It's a character study more than anything else. And because of that, I'm sure a lot of people with short attention spans are going to call it boring. But for me, it ended up being pretty much exactly what I needed it to be, even if I didn't know that going into it. It's maybe a little long in the tooth in some aspects, but when you really stop and think about it, all of those drawn-out character moments absolutely serve a purpose. A lot of people are already comparing this movie to Logan for pretty obvious reasons. I mean, everything from the tone of the film to the fact that it stars Hugh Jackman and a little girl who helps him feel again is contributing to that. But in reality, I actually found the film to be much more reminiscent of Unforgiven than I did Logan.
Killed just about everything that walks or crawled at one time or another.
We're talking about portraying a notorious outlaw who is very much at the end of his run, and kind of coming to terms with all of the bad that he did, and he's carrying a lot of baggage. And make no mistake about it, this version of Robin Hood stretches far beyond just being morally ambiguous. In fact, he's downright ruthless in many aspects, and it's kind of fascinating to watch. And this is where this film deviates from pretty much every other Robin Hood adaptation prior to it. This film is very much about how the legend of Robin Hood has been manipulated over the years to a degree, and how he was much more of a heartless killer than his reputation would have you believe. So what happens is there's this endless line of people looking to extract revenge on him because he murdered so many people's loved ones over the years. You get a sense watching the movie that maybe he started out as a rob from the rich and give to the poor kind of guy, like the legend suggests. But somewhere along the way he kind of lost his way and became a shell of his former self, and now he has to live with all the bad that he did. And just when you think this movie has shown the worst of him, or you've at least heard about the worst that he's done, they dump another revelation on you that makes him look like the biggest piece of on the planet. And you know what? In a lesser movie, this would absolutely come off as a character assassination. But in this movie, because it's well made, somehow you are still invested in his journey, and you still want to find out if he can be redeemed. Can he become this person that the legends claim that he is? It all adds a level of weight to this story that otherwise we've heard told 1,000 times before.
Oh, this is heavy.
There's that word again, heavy.
It almost made me wish there was a flashback of sorts throughout the movie to show you how he started out, so you can get a definitive picture in your head of how far he has fallen. But I guess by not showing that, it also adds to the mystique around his character, so I do understand why they didn't. And Hugh Jackman deserves a ton of credit for his portrayal of this grizzled version of Robin Hood. An absolute dynamite performance by him. And somehow he is absolutely able to pull off that transition from being scary and menacing to showing a lighter side of him that is buried in the darkness. Jodie Comer plays the nun in this movie that plays a major role in bringing the kinder, gentler side out of him. And she puts in a phenomenal performance as well. In fact, pretty much everywhere you look, there are solid to great performances scattered throughout this film. This movie is absolutely something to behold from a visual perspective as well. I totally dug the moody, atmospheric vibe throughout the entire film. It really served to enhance just how unforgiving the environment depicted in the film truly is. And while the violence is mostly relegated to the early stages of the film, before the character study stuff starts, it is absolutely brutal and infinitely effective when it is used. It absolutely gives this film a Game of Thrones-esque feel to it that was 100% welcomed. This movie also had a surprising amount of pretty memorable lines in it. One stood out in particular when Robin Hood tells someone that if he ever sees them again, he will, quote, slit their throat and never think about them again.
If he dies, he dies.
That is some cold-hearted to say to someone if you are truly trying to put the fear of God in them. Bottom line, this movie was not what I expected it to be at all, and because of that, I actually enjoyed it so much more. It makes you think about the character of Robin Hood and all the legends around him in a completely different light. It is incredibly interesting to think about how facts and details get less accurate the more these stories are passed down, and to apply that logic to an iconic character like Robin Hood was absolutely something that I'd like to see more of. I'm always down for fresh interpretations as long as they are well done and they make sense. And I think the death of Robin Hood very much applies. And that's why I'm going to give this movie the pleased Palpatine.
Good.
Y'all be cool. Right on.
The Death of Robin Hood. Alan, you saw this film with Hugh Jackman. We saw the kind of depressing trailer. So I want to know, is the movie like the trailer, and what is this movie? I haven't heard a lot of hype about it.
Okay, well, let's start by saying it's all in the title.
Oh no.
that's this movie. So, I'll go into it. When watching this movie, I wasn't expecting to get what I got. But that doesn't mean it's a good movie. Robin Hood, played by Hugh Jackman, is introduced as an aged, battle-worn outlaw, still killing without remorse. He's lives out in the, I believe it's Ireland. I could be wrong, but he's out in the frozen tundra of Ireland, trying to survive. And a little girl wanders out there trying to find Robin Hood, and things don't turn out so well. Later on, I don't want to spoil what happened there, but later on he runs into a man, Little John, played by Bill Skarsgård, and he is Little John has taken the persona of Edward, and this is kind of the heart of this, or the foundation of this movie. But what happened was Little John killed a man named Edward. He took his identity, went to his farm, took over the farm and his wife, and just lived his life as Edward. That was until the townspeople figured out what was going on and basically ran him out and took over everything. And so he enlists Robin Hood to go and take his farm that he stole back and take his girl back. And things end up horribly wrong. And I'll say the first act of this movie is ultra violent, ultra gory. I
didn't understand that. Now I want to see the film again, because one thing I will say about movie reviewers always put them in quotes, because some of them are not reviewers, many of them are not. Is sometimes they catch something or a few things that you didn't catch, and as for me, I did not understand this film while part of it was my fault because I fell asleep, and the parts I did not pay attention because it's so hard for me to grasp the whole plot of this movie. And I was, what is going on? What am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be? Well, you know, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should watch review. And maybe instead someone could tell me, basically. Mike, not good enough, Mike. Can you hear me? You hear me, Mike? Anyway, yeah, that's, yeah.
did not watch most of the first act because, I mean, it's brutal. You know, you have Arrow, the first act, ultra gory. I could not watch most of the first act because, I mean, it's brutal. You know, you have arrows, you have axes, and you have maces, and they are used in the way you would use them in real life. And the effects are one of the way you would see it in real life, these weapons being used. And so what happens is, when it's all said and done and dozens of people die, the only people left is Robin Hood, who is basically mortally wounded. You have Edward and his daughter, Margaret, and they need to escape. But because of Robin Hood's state, he can't really travel, and they can only take him so far, or they're going to get caught themselves. And so they take Robin Hood to an island off the shore. And the island is basically run by the nuns, and they nurse Robin Hood back to health. And is there that this is kind of the emotional part of the movie, the second act, where Robin Hood basically has to face his reality. The fact that, and this is what the movie stresses, is this idea that Robin Hood was a myth. You know, robs from the rich, gives to the poor. But the reality is that may have been the way Robin Hood started, but by the end of Robin Hood's life, he just became this brutal killer. You know, they indiscriminately kill people because they need their money or they need their food that they have. And so he's become this true bandit. And Robin Hood is a very good one. And let's just say he's left a lot of bodies in his wake over his life. And this is, the second half is basically, his time on this nunnery island, to where he gets to reflect on his life, but ultimately has to confront his past. And that's what this movie is. Look, again, this is not the movie I expected. I thought it was interesting. The idea of this mythology that is Robin Hood and the Hugh Jackman character kind of reconciling with that mythology. You know, that the person he's become is not the person that he started as. And my issue is that the movie, the emotional part of the movie, the heart of this movie was so mediocre that it just didn't. It was like, really, you have such a great idea here. You know, the idea of a man who has to confront his past, or whose past is ultimately going to force himself to confront him. And it's just done in a way that has just felt like a thud, and it was kind of mediocre. And here's the thing. The way drama works is it works on extremes. You know, your lowest point has to be so far from your highest point in this movie. The idea that if he ever reconciles himself or finds some kind of redemption, there needs to be an extreme emotion attached to it. And I finally figured it out. That first act where all this ultra violence occurs, where, your heart is just racing because you're seeing people being killed in brutal ways, that is extreme. His reconciliation needed to be just as extreme on the other end. And the problem with the movie is it swings really high in the first act and just kind of slowly swings back and then doesn't go the other direction. There's no momentum the other way. And so you don't have an extreme moment that matches in the end, that matches the extreme moment in the beginning. And so, the best thing I could say about this movie is there's a really good idea in this movie and it couldn't pull it off.
Well, yeah, I got that sense even from the trailer. It was very dark. And I don't mean just dark content wise, like what we were seeing visually, but it's like, it just looked dark. Like you can't see. I'm really getting sick of this trend of movies that are so dark, you can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, this looked like that as well.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, there are things that
look like that as well. Dark, you can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, this looked like that as well.
Yeah.
You can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, this looked like that as well.
Yeah.
What movie did he say looked like that?
And the other thing is like, there are things that happens to
Obsession looked like that at the point, yeah.
Robin Hood on the island that is great ideas, but it just, and you're just not feeling the emotional weight that moment should have been. And I don't want to spoil any of it. But this is, to me, it's a hard movie to watch, especially the first act. And then the payoff is just, it's like, wah, wah. It feels like a British drama. Sorry for you Brits out there.
So do you recommend it?
No. I mean, good performance.
Even with Hugh Jackman, it's a pass.
Yeah, it's like I'm not faulting any of the performances. I love the performances here. No one's bad, but again, the thing about redemption is that when you receive redemption in your life, forgiveness, grace, it should have an overwhelming impact on your soul, and you just don't get that in this.
Because most people don't get that that awe-encompassing feeling of forgiveness. They don't really get that. Like a lot of people that say they convert to Christianity, yet they don't act like that. And I think that sometimes redemption, it can be a slow process. Even if you get redemption, it's slow to feel it, because if he in fact has killed a lot of people, redemption might be a slow bone for him. It might be a while until he actually feels it. It has to slowly bone into him. To, deal with all that, reason for redemption. Being killed. It's not like stealing or just beating somebody up, it's slowly killing people. And then the reasons which he killed for. So, let me see which video is this? This is video 4. I think this is video 5. Because I gotta include the URL in my description.
So, firstly, can Hollywood just stop using this fucking soundbite of wind? Like throughout this movie, that's all you hear. Is there like no new original wind foley, wind sound effects available in an archive that I'm assuming is as big as something that's
He said assuming.
run by top men? So the death of Robin Hood, like no one is really talking about it. I remember I touched on it in my anticipated films for 2026 at the beginning of the year. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was going to be done by A24, and I was really excited about it. We got Hugh Jackman playing Robin Hood, and it just seemed like a really dark spin on the character of Robin Hood, and I was all for it. It was giving me like Northman vibes, you know, the lighthouse, even like the aesthetic and look of Nosferatu, just grim, and I'm all for it. And in the lead up to last night's screening here in Sydney, which by the way was so chill, like there was no media wall, no nothing. People looked like they were dressed in their pajamas at one point, which I really welcomed. I was like, this is so chill. This is so cozy. I love it. But telling people, and even my wife, I wrote on the calendar, Robin Hood premiere, and she goes, oh, there's a new Robin Hood movie. I'm like, no. This isn't the Robin Hood you think. This is like Logan in Sherwood Forest, and there are some parallels to Logan, but like it's very service level stuff. So again, not many people are talking about this, and the fact, you know, you got Hugh Jackman, you got Bill Skarsgård, you got Murray Bartlett as well, you got Jodie Comer as well. So yeah, aesthetically as well from the trailer, it looked amazing, and I was really looking forward to this film. I will say, the first 20 minutes of this film are absolutely brutal, like Northman mixed with Terrifier brutality. Jaws are getting ripped in half, and it essentially sets the tone and sets the vibe for what we think this film is going to be for its 2-hour odd runtime. Then after that 20-25 minutes, Robin Hood, played by Hugh Jackman, is severely injured and is taken to an orchard to rehabilitate. He's got a broken leg, broken ribs, like he is absolutely fucked. And from there, the film flips this switch where it becomes so subtle and subdued that there is no more violence essentially throughout the rest of the film's runtime. And at first it caught me off guard. I just assumed it was going to be that typical structure of he's going to rehabilitate, he's going to do a Christian Bale in The Dark Knight Rises where he's going to rehabilitate, come back, save Gotham, and then in this case, Robin Hood is going to rehabilitate and take down the people who wronged him and also kind of set things up at the beginning of the film. But thinking about it, there was no real threat apart from him, even though the people at the orchard, the nurses, everyone, they don't know who he really is. He goes under a different name. He goes under a different alias because of the legend of Robin Hood, these tall tales that have been told about him. It's seemingly gotten bigger than him. And then what the film delves into from then on out is like a retrospect of a man who's had a life of killing innocent people to the point where he forgets how many people he's killed, children as well. And it's like a reflection on his mistakes, people he's wronged, and owning your mistakes. And this is one of those things where it's either going to make it for you or break it for you. And at first with that transition from something that started out so brutal and heavy-handed, and I was like, hell yeah, let's go for it. That transition into what is the rest of the film, it was jarring at first. And I was like, oh no, like, again, you assume that there's going to be a big battle at the end. But essentially, the battle is from within when it comes to Robin Hood. It's him coming to grips with his demons. And again, people he's wronged, people that are close to him that he has wronged by proxy. Not knowing, but also owning your mistakes. And I fucking loved this film, man. Just given how much of an abrupt flip it does, it could on paper be disastrous. And again, it's not going to be for everyone. But I think because it's such a different spin on the world of Robin Hood, the characters as well, like Bill Skarsgård as Little John, like these guys aren't your swashbuckling duo. These guys are brutal assholes. Like, they are fucked. Now, on the poster, it says he was no hero, and it paints that perfectly. Like, going back to the opening of the film, like the first 20-25 minutes, it's brutal. It immediately sets the tone. It paints Robin not as this legendary folk hero that, like, we've seen countless times in other films, animation, men wearing tights, blinking, stuff like that. But it's like an aging, wounded man, like, carrying the weight of a lifetime where, again, the tales are so tall about him, but the man himself is, like, withering away. And it's essentially just documenting his final years and his final bits of life, and coming to terms with what he's done and having that almost rehabilitation, not just physically, but mentally. Again, he has no idea how many people he's killed off the top of his head. And it gets to the point where he just doesn't remember their face and it's just a job for him. And he's just become so numb to the effect and the experience of killing someone. And I like that instead of focusing on the grand adventure, the film then just becomes about aging and redemption. And not just from Robin, but the characters he's surrounded by, like Murray Bartlett, who plays a leper, then also Bill Skarsgård. And of course, Jodie Comer, who plays Sister Bridget. There is some connection. There is some connective tissue. Now, speaking of these characters, the performances on a whole are incredible. Everyone brings their A game. Everyone understood the assignment. But mostly, it's Hugh Jackman. And I know it's big words to throw around, but I really do hope this film does get some recognition when it comes to the Oscars. And like, I try not to take the Oscars too seriously. Like, it's not what it used to be, but also I think this is one of the best performances I've seen from Hugh. If not, I think like the best performance I've ever seen from him, like to topple everything personally, is his performance in Prisoners. But then also you got like Logan. But this, he just pulls out all the stops, man. He is mesmerizing. Each little nuance, every movement, every facial expression, it's done with purpose. Then also you've got the wonderful makeup, costume design, production design. The landscape of Ireland is disturbingly and depressingly stunning. It's just grim. And again, that's why it has that look and aesthetic of Nosferatu, like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, then also The Lighthouse and also The Northman. And the film just begs the question of like, what happens when the legend's over? Like, you've had your heyday, you've peaked. Like, what does a man do when the stories about him become bigger than he is? It's just this thoughtful, surprisingly emotional film that isn't afraid to slow down and sit down with those questions. And I think that's why it was quite jarring at first, when you think it's going to be one thing and it's great. And I think they also just had to touch on that brutality, just to showcase that this was once this brutal warrior. And now when he is faced with his mortality, but also faced with people that he's wronged and seriously hurt, not just physically, but emotionally as well, like torn people to shreds. And like Sister Bridget says in the film, I'm used to having people come to this island who I help and heal. And there's that beautiful rebuttal from Robin Hood. He goes, heal me. And that's what the rest of this film is all about. And it was just so refreshing to see. And again, it's going to be an abrupt shift for a lot of people. It's not going to work for a lot of people. But I think I welcomed it because it was something so different and far removed from what we're used to. And also just to watch Hugh Jackman up on screen, just pull out all the acting stops. But not only him, like the supporting cast as well do an incredible job. You've got all these wonderful elements working so well together. Even if it was a bit of an abrupt shift and it took me like a good 10 or 15 minutes to adjust to what this storyline is going to be, because as it progresses during the quieter times, you realize there's going to be no real threat in terms of the third act, the conflict, the resolution. The resolution is definitely a gut puncher and a half, but it's a resolution that goes against the template of what we're used to, of setting up that this is a warrior, he's injured and he has to come back and fight and reclaim all that stuff. It is none of that, and I was fine with it. And with that, I'm going to be giving The Death of Robin Hood 4 Blinkins out of 5. So guys, do yourselves a favor, go check this one out. I really hope it does well. Like financially, it's crazy how no one is really talking about it. A friend of mine who saw the film with me last night made a good point. She's like, I think this might be like an everything, everywhere, all at once approach, where it kind of goes under the radar, but then award season starts to buzz, stuff like that. And then there's Oscar buzz. So we'll see how we go. But everyone in front and behind the lens, just, kudos. Impeccable job. And just something different as well. Like I said, when I flipped the switch, I didn't know if I was okay with it. By the end, totally okay with it. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I would watch some of these out of theater reactions for Supergirl, but I'm tired of seeing those because Supergirl, if you notice, it comes out. And this is kind of going off topic here, but I feel like we should do this. Supergirl, it's an hour, gonna be almost 2 hours. It does not release until the 26th, this Friday. It comes out this Friday. Really this Thursday. But I'm just tired of seeing these out of theater reactions. You know, because it's gonna be nice to see Jason Momoa, to see how he plays Lobo, a character I know nothing about. Into the Badlands. It's the show. So, anyway.
He robs from the rich and gives to the poor, except for when he doesn't. Except for when he is a brutal and cold-hearted killing machine. This is not the fun forest romp of Robin Hood that you are accustomed to. I had to go back after watching The Death of Robin Hood and for a palate cleanser, rewatch the classic Daffy Duck Looney Tunes cartoon.
Actually, it's a bucket of quarter theft, but I'm not telling him that.
Yes. To trip and trip and trip and trip and tripping up and down. If you also would like that, I'd recommend it highly after going to see The Death of Robin Hood, because it's a lot. Come hang out with us, come subscribe. This is a big A24 movie. So we do those all the time. If you're interested in that as well, come subscribe and hang out. Alonzo, what happens in The Death of Robin Hood?
I am the outlaw.
Yeah, let's do that here. Let's hang out, subscribe, like the video, like the live stream. We can all just sit here and watch these ridiculous reviews.
Robin Hood.
Yeah, we are not in the Sherwood Forest. In fact, I don't know that there's a living leaf in this movie. It's really grim and cloudy and pale and foggy and storm tossed. We have Robin Hood at the end of his life. He is not to be fucked with, and he is not interested in his own legend. And when he hears it from people, he's like, that didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about. These are all stories. Nonetheless, we see him have a late in life encounter with his old pal, Little John, who is now going by the name of Edward, who is trying to just settle down and be a farmer. And yet somehow that's not working out, mainly because he killed the guy whose farm that he took over and passed himself off as him. So, oops. Anyway, one thing leads to another. Robin Hood is grievously injured, and he winds up at a priory that is run by Jodie Comer. Always love to see Jodie Comer in these movies.
So good.
And as he is being nursed back to health, various people and incidents will sort of force him to kind of come to terms with his past and begin to contemplate the end. The title is a spoiler. Robin Hood dies. But the why and the how is what we're about here, and the who he will become and what he will make of what's left of his time. It's pretty fascinating. This is a very contemplative film. It is the rare movie that is both elegiac and brutal. It is super violent, especially in the first hour or so, or the first half hour at least. But at the same time, it is cold in all the ways and, pretty unsparing. It's from Michael Sadowski, who gave us Pig. And he has a feel for these sort of brooding, human stories and also kind of the brutality of nature. And Hugh Jackman, I'm sure there will be comparisons to Logan. He's playing another sort of iconic hero at the end of his life. And there's a young girl he has to, shelter and all of that stuff.
Tormented loner, Hugh Jackman playing against his charming, charismatic type. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of grunting, a lot of squinting, a lot of hair. And, and he's not the only one who's sort of like hiding his light under a bushel. This movie gives us Murray Bartlett as a leper, who we only see his eyes, basically. And you know what? Look, if you're Murray Bartlett and you have to carry the Murray Bartlett face around, I'm sure you're like, yes, I will do a movie where it's all about my eyes and my acting chops, so why not? I don't begrudge him that opportunity.
He does liven it up for sure, because this movie is like relentlessly dour. So I didn't realize who it was until afterward. I'm like,
me neither.
What a waste of Murray Bartlett. Also, you have a Skarsgård. You got Bill Skarsgård as Little John, and he's unrecognizable as well. Like all these crazy handsome people.
Yeah.
And
Noah Jupe looks like Noah Jupe. You get that,
And Jodie Comer looks like Jodie Comer, like this eyes and the cheekbones. I found this just relentlessly dour and just repetitive and just a total slog for a long time. Like that whole first half an hour to an hour. I mean, it's got like a rich kind of mucky texture to it between the mud and the blood and just like fire against the nighttime sky. I gotta mention the cinematographer is Pat Scola, who also shot Pig, who also shot Lurker, who also shot We Grown Now, which is like poetry.
Okay, yeah, that was.
This is an incredibly gorgeous film. This is so beautiful, and there are so many like establishing shots that are just painterly, where it's just the light coming through a window into a dark room and into whatever the priory, the room where Robin Hood is living out his days. A lot of it is very, very beautiful. And that is what saves this from being such a miserable slog for so long. But then I thought about it afterward and I thought, okay, maybe it is so dark and so violent and so bloody in an intense and relentless way to then make that second part of the story feel even lighter, because it is all like long days in the orchard and sunlight and ocean views and the possibility of healing and the possibility of redemption. So perhaps that first part had to be as dark and intense as it is to create that contrast with the second part. It's hard to get through though for a while.
It is. It does give the film somewhere to go, but you're right. And even in the second half, like there's like these caverns lit by candles and stuff. And I was just kind of like, luckily I was at a matinee. I thought anybody seeing this movie like at a 10 o'clock show is going to maybe have a little difficulty staying awake just because this movie's so dark and quiet and foreboding and, all the time. But, I think if you go with its rhythm and you sort of see what they're going for, on the one hand, I'm kind of like, right after, we have our first trillionaire. Is now the time to make a movie about how Robin Hood was a piece of shit, actually, But on the other hand, I'm like, maybe all legends need to be punctured a little, So,
challenge because
I don't think the movie's trying to say like, oh, those rich people were good after all. I think it's just like, this guy was a regular thief who got, sort of blown up into being like a spectacular one, and the people's thief for whatever reasons.
A heroic figure. He doesn't want to be a heroic figure and does everything he can to obliterate that image. Yeah, I mean, Hugh Jackman is really good here. As you say, it's so much of it is his eyes and just the quiet physicality and his imposing nature and just like squinting, almost like a Clint Eastwood character, just like squinting into the distance, to indicate his quiet torment. And it has a lot in common with Pig in that regard too. The Nicolas Cage character in Pig, which we both loved.
Yeah.
And how he is, coming to terms with his past, but also, trying to work through who he wants to be. And so those two kind of, I keep saying quiet torment, but that's what these characters are. Like they're working through some stuff and in the pursuit of like hard won redemption. And so there's some similarities there as well. I eventually came to really appreciate this from a technical perspective more than from a storytelling one, and like the costume design is very like rich and tactile in terms of like rough hewn, and it all looks very like period specific, and like the priory where they live on the cliff is very imposing, and it looks
some
great.
manufacturer of children's clothes should make that girl's dress that's in like the cornflower blue with the one little sort of cut in that has like the 6 little threads holding it together. Like the camera seems to dwell on that a lot. I'm like, that is a really great outfit for a child,
Yeah, and Noah Jupe is really good in this too. If you saw Hamnet, Noah Jupe has to do a lot without saying a whole lot as well. I think as long as you know what you're getting into with this, I went to a 4:00 matinee in my neighborhood and it was really crowded, and I cannot imagine that the majority of those people knew what they were in for, right? Like, I'm guessing they probably saw Hugh Jackman as Robin Hood and thought, ooh, this is going to be a really fun adventure. It is not.
It is always doing what it's doing. And so as long as you're down for that, I think it is, it is not trying to kind of soft pedal its intent. Like, it is gunning for this space of, kind of, as you say, quiet torment, brooding, regrets, violence, but it is very squarely making a home there. And I think really delivering on that front. So if you're down for that, you're going to get it in spades.
Yeah, and everyone's good at it. Jodie Comer, always great. I mean, she's so subtle. There's a scene where she gets a piece of information that kind of floors her, and just to watch the way like that rushes across her face, and just you can see her almost getting like knocked backward by the words. And so, she's great. I mean, she's always good. Everyone's really good in this. It's a lot. Just know that it's a lot. Okay, so what is your number then on the death of Robin Hood?
I'll say a 7.3. It's, I'll probably never watch it again, but it's, it is exactly what it wants to be.
Yeah, I will say a 6.8.
Okay.
And a lot of that is just for the way it's shot and the scenery and the costume design. And everyone is just really solid in it. But like you, I never want to see it again. Death of Robin Hood's in theaters. Will you see it? Will you see it again? Let us know.
No, probably won't. Oh, they had to include, look. They had to include the little fucking review of pigs. Come on, man. Get real. Okay. So this is the score. That's the score we saw that. So now we're going to move on to Leviticus. Yet another film that is underrated. Didn't really like this film much. Didn't hate it. Just thought that maybe it's a little bit too convoluted, just a bit, So yeah, let's. And I'm probably gonna add to this collection. First, let's look at the actual score here. If it would just tell you below. Two 2026. Thank you. No, that's okay. Go. 93 to 81. I like to check a look at everything, but you can see, 100% top critics. Critics like this movie. It's made for them. Audience are kind of like meh. I mean, I know that's a 78%, but they mostly like it, but it's really like meh. It's like they were okay with it. They were maybe a little bit more than okay. Anyway, let's get into it.
Hey everybody, today I am going to...
She probably didn't like it because of how short the video is.
To be reviewing Leviticus. This was directed by Adrian Chirella. Chirella is from Australia, and this is his first feature-length film, and he has chosen to dabble in the psychological horror genre like a lot of directors for their first outing. This one is a coming-of-age tale. This is about a teenage boy, and he's called Name, and he lives in this very rural, conservative area of Australia. He befriends this other boy in school named Ryan. The two love to shove each other.
Name spelled with a I-M-A-I. Jobo.
Push each other around. There's a lot of physical aggression that is clearly romantic in intention. Unfortunately, homosexuality is not accepted where they grew up because it leans, obviously, like I said, very conservative and it's very puritanical. The adults in charge all seem to be in some state of denial as a method of survival. When it is discovered that Name and Ryan are hooking up, the parents immediately want to put a stop to it. So they force the boys into this religious healing ceremony, and it's meant to kind of shock the sexual urges out of them. And it is a metaphor for conversion therapy, we can all assume. But this is a horror movie, and so there has to be a gimmick and there has to be an angle to that gimmick. And here, the ceremony that the boys, take part in, it unleashes this invisible demon of sorts. It's invisible to everybody else, but to you, the entity takes the form of whoever you are in love with, whoever you are attracted to. It lures you in, and it is violent towards you, and it can even kill you. And it's meant to represent, of course, repression, guilt, and shame that can turn violent, or communal shame that can turn violent. But there's also this idea of not knowing who to trust when you're first falling in love with somebody, especially when everybody around you is saying you're not supposed to be with that person and you're not supposed to have these feelings. So there is a lot of baggage attached to this particular romantic connection, and so it reminds me of It Follows in a way, where the thing that is following you directly deals with tainted adolescent innocence. There's a beautiful tone to this movie. Overall, the movie's very melancholy, and you feel the pain within it. There are a lot of dark, grim colors as well to kind of create this small conservative town aesthetic. I love the old fake wood paneling in some of the houses and in some of the churches. It has this old school sort of feeling, and I love the images of the sky because they're often cut with the telephone pole wires. I love the unspoken mood because it feels violent. You feel the brutality constantly. It's almost like this internal hemorrhaging feeling. This feeling of destruction, but also this outward need to create violence because the feelings inside are raging. I like how the movie mixes the feeling of lust, that emotional desire for connection, and it mixes it with the adolescent hormones as well as that rage manifested into the physicality. Having said all of that, despite the fact that I like a lot of what's going on here, there is something missing from nearly every angle of this movie. It feels like it hasn't fully developed its perspective. It's pensive and meandering as an experience, and it's almost like it's trying to feel itself out. It's trying to discover what it's forming into as it's going along. But it doesn't grow boldly enough into any direction to stick the landing. So while it has its moments, and it is interesting, like I said, at times, it is a little bit too lukewarm and hesitant for me. The two main characters, the performances are excellent, and I love the way they casted so far as the faces, but the characters themselves just aren't developed enough for this invisible entity to really resonate emotionally. Especially when you add the idea of being in love, there's already that fear of are you who you say you are? But they don't really build off of that. And I also wanted a lot more out of the relationship between Name and his mother, because I feel like we could have really discovered more about the religious symbolism and her connection to it. Because that is a huge component of the film, the way that people manipulate religion or reject it outright. But all of this, the way that it is presented to us, it's vague and simplistic. I think they could have explored how adults use religion to serve their own selfish agendas, but instead they kind of just skirt over it, dance over it all, and thus the entity that begins to haunt the boys, it's not that scary, and it's not backed by anything other than this broad idea of representing social cruelty and violence. It's a weird movie so far as how it is paced, and for a while, there's very little horror going on. It feels more like a psychological drama with hints of horror, and then it grows more into that generic formula of horror that we all are familiar with. But it doesn't do it with enough punch for a lot of those pulpy elements to land within this darker story. I am not against slow burn horror. In fact, I welcome that type of stuff. I just feel like this movie, the script, it's almost like we're working off a first or second draft, because the story is a little bit difficult to follow in the first act before the narrative and the concept really start to kick in. It also has moments where it's really leaning into the novelty horror idea and the cheap jump scare tactics, but again, because there's such a seriousness to the movie, it just doesn't feel like it gels as a device. There also isn't much of a climax when you really think about it, and so the film, symbolically, while I could see this ending working, because it does remind me of the ending to It Follows, it just comes at the end of something that was too predictable as it was presented, and there just isn't enough of a redemption arc for the main character or self-actualization. It just doesn't have the emotional effect that I wanted. And it's not scary, but I think it is effective in other ways. Yes, it is half-baked, but I kept wanting to watch it. There was something about the performances, the look, and the feel of it that, I can feel an interesting voice shaping here. I am curious to see what this director does in the future. I just hope we can flesh the concepts out a little bit more boldly. And it is unfortunate. It's just a tough act to follow. We're in this big horror resurgence with obsession and backrooms. It's not the film's fault when it came out, but I just don't see it touching a nerve with audiences in the same ways. But I think it could find a smaller art house audience. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist and I do commissioned portraits. I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much.
Bye.
Leviticus is a new gimmick horror movie that definitely deals with some heavy subject matter, and it's very effective. Let's review.
Gimmick horror movie, huh? Using the same words.
Leviticus stars Joe Bird, Stacy Clausen, Jeremy Blewett, and is directed by Adrian Chiarella.
Open it! It's gonna kill him!
What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new 2026 review, and man, do I love me some Aussie horror. It seems like Australians put out solid, quality horror content consistently. And Leviticus definitely caught my eye because, A, the name Leviticus, or Levi, my miniature schnauzer that recently passed away back in December, his Levi was short for Leviticus. That was what we named him, Leviticus, but we always called him Levi. So I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's interesting. The trailer, which I haven't watched it recently, I remember watching it a while back, but I didn't quite grasp what the movie was about. When I watch trailers, I sort of try to just absorb the vibe of the movie. I don't try to hone in too much on the specifics of the plot and whatnot. And sometimes I'll walk away from a trailer not necessarily knowing what it's about, but I was definitely curious about this movie just because of the way it felt watching the trailer. But this is a gimmick horror movie, and I would say this is a good cross between like It Follows and Obsession. And I'm not saying the plots are like identical to those movies. No, but I got definite vibes from different aspects of those movies. So let's give you a quick plot synopsis to set the table here, okay? And by the way, packed house when I went and saw this in the movies last night, which was really nice for a lesser known horror movie. Because most of the time it's really us dug in horror fans that support these movies. And when we get to the theater, there's usually like maybe 25% of it filled up. But no, it was a packed house when I saw this last night. So I love that. And I think Obsession is really lifting up the horror genre in a big way, and I think a lot of other movies are benefiting from that. Like, I almost wonder if Leviticus would not have performed as well opening night, and I don't know the numbers or anything, I'm just speaking on my own theater experience, if it wasn't for the success of Obsession. Our main characters are Name and Ryan. Name is played by Joe Bird. You might remember him from Talk to Me. I thought he looked familiar, and then I looked it up and was like, oh yeah, I definitely remember, because Talk to Me is fantastic. And he's got the hots for Ryan, played by Stacey Clausen. They develop a relationship early on in this movie. And there's this other character by the name of Hunter that factors into the story as well. But I guess without giving you too much, it is sort of like a love triangle, where initially two get together, and then Ryan and Hunter, they sort of have feelings for each other. So, of course, Name is hurt by this, but Ryan and Hunter get caught by the town, and there is a religious aspect to this. So then there's this priest who performs this spell or this seance on the two of them, and it looks very, very painful, but what it does is it casts this curse on them, really. The curse is the gimmick of this movie. What is the curse? Whoever you are, but what it does is aspect to this. So then there's this priest who performs this spell or this seance on the two of them, and it looks very, very painful, but what it does is it casts this curse on them, really. The curse is the gimmick of this movie. What is the curse? Whoever you are the most attracted to, you're going to see them even though they're not really there. They're coming after you, and then there's a quick moment of intimacy followed by a very, very, very violent aftermath. This is one of the most unique premises I've seen in a horror movie in a while, and we've had a lot of really interesting gimmicks out there. I mean, Obsession was a gimmick horror movie. We just had Whistle. Was that this year or was that last year? That was sort of a gimmick horror movie. I love these type movies. I think when they're done well, they're great and they're really, really fun. Although this isn't a fun movie, this is definitely heavy, and it definitely has some great embedded themes in it, really about acceptance and really just being yourself, loving yourself for who you are, no matter what the outside world thinks. And I think especially dealing with the gay community. Because especially back in the 80s and before that, they were the outcasts. And I think there are, these small towns that still abide to that notion. And so this movie deals with so many different themes of guilt and acceptance and regret. I really just walked away from this movie so moved. It was very, very profound. And I think the horror aspect of it only added to it, because you really get to see the struggles that gay people have to go through even today. But I don't think this movie does it in a preachy type of way at all. I think it more leans on the gimmick of the horror, which lends itself to the struggles of the situation. And it's heartbreaking. You get some really great performances by Joe Bird and Stacey Clausen. I really bought their chemistry together. And there's definitely some really unsettling sequences. I think there's a point in the movie where Name, he realizes that he needs to stay away from Ryan, because when you're in a good relationship with somebody and you have this affliction coming after you, you don't know if you're actually seeing the real person or the actual curse. And so it could make a person go crazy, make them go paranoid. And this movie just really offers up so many different theories in your head, where you could go with this premise and how to survive it. I have my own theories on how to I guess beat this, and I think a lot of you would probably agree with me, but I'm not going to divulge what I think, because I want you to go into the movie getting the full context and I guess coming up with your own theories in the end. But I love movies that do that don't necessarily draw the line and tell you exactly how to beat it or how to stay away from it. And I have mentioned the movie It Follows quite a few times over the past couple of years, comparing it to other movies. And I think that's great. I think the influence of It Follows, whether you like that movie or not, is pretty grand. And I love that because I adore It Follows so much. They're literally working on They Follow right now, which is really cool. But I think more than any other movie, you're going to get heavy It Follows vibes from this movie because that curse is coming after you and it never, ever stops. You don't want to be alone. You want to have somebody around you to protect yourself. And you got to sleep at night. So this is one of the most deadly curses you can possibly imagine. And I think this movie really stresses that. It's a great horror movie, okay? And I think it does have a really cool message. So, high purchase worthy for Leviticus. I can't wait for you guys to check this out this weekend. 92%, I believe, on the tomato meter. Not that that matters to a lot of you. I see that online. You're like, screw the critics. Okay, that's fine. That's a whole nother conversation. But, yeah, I think a lot of you horror fans will dig this movie. All right. Also, be sure to subscribe to the second channel. Drum Dums Extra just dropped another Hulk TV episode review on there yesterday. I'm loving doing those. They're so fun. Come over to Killer Flicks where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. We do Free for All Fridays. Follow me, Drum Dums, on my socials. Promote my Patreon. Become a channel member. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Drum Dum out.
Shit, taking shit.
Hello everybody, I'm Dan Merle, and I want to talk about a movie that hit theaters this weekend called Leviticus. It is a small little horror movie in a summer of small horror movies, and it's a film that first hit my radar when I saw it back in January at the Sundance Film Festival. It's now gotten a wide release, or close to wide release, courtesy of Neon. I went to see it again because, you know, the festival atmosphere, sometimes you're wondering, am I, caught up in the hype? I went and saw it again, and I enjoyed it just as much as I did the first time. And one thing I like to do on the channel is, even if the movie's really small, if it's something that really interests me and that I want to talk more about, then I'll do a video about it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about Leviticus. The first half of this video will be a non-spoiler review, revealing just the basic plot details. And then after that, I'm going to go into a spoiler section because I think there's a lot of really interesting things to talk about with this movie. But let's start with the basics. Leviticus is the feature debut of Australian director Adrian Chiarella. It stars Joe Bird, who you might remember from Talk to Me. He played the little brother in that movie, and I thought was great. And Stacey Clausen, who's in the Netflix original film Thrash. That might be the most likely place where you've seen them. They play Naim and Ryan, two high school students who fall for each other in a small, depressing industrial town. And when their parents discover that the boys have feelings for each other, they employ a deliverance healer to perform a ceremony to protect them from their romance. The ceremony unleashes an entity that stalks each of them individually, and the way that the movie portrays it is really interesting. For Naim, when he sees the entity, it takes on the form of Ryan. For Ryan, when he sees the entity, it takes on the form of Naim, and nobody else can see it. And so what that means is, throughout the movie, every time one of them sees the other, they don't know if it's actually them or if it is this entity that's trying to stalk and ultimately kill them. So the two of them have a choice throughout the film, which is basically to stay away from each other and deny their own feelings, or to see each other and take the risk that it's not really the person that they're falling in love with, that it's this thing that's going to murder them. This is an Australian horror film. It was made for a budget of about $3.5 million US. It was acquired for about $5 million by Neon at the Sundance Film Festival, and it was one of my most interesting experiences. I'm sorry if you've heard this story before, because I mentioned it in my Sundance coverage, but I saw it at the midnight world premiere, so I was among the first audience to see this movie when it premiered at midnight, I think on the first night of the Sundance Film Festival, and by pure coincidence, I was sitting behind the team from Neon, who had sent several people to go and scout the film. And as soon as the movie was over, I mean, when the first credit hit the screen, all of the Neon people jumped up and basically made a beeline for the exit. And in my head, I thought, okay, well, that's either a really good sign for this movie or a really bad sign for this movie. And when I heard that Neon had purchased the film and was going to give it full theatrical distribution, I was very, very happy that more people were going to get to see it. Now that it's come out, I've opened myself up a little bit more to some of the reaction and comments about the film. And the one thing that I often see, the label that I see applied to this film is that, oh, it's a gay It Follows. And I will acknowledge that there are some surface level similarities. It is about some kind of mysterious supernatural entity that stalks somebody after they experience a form of intimacy. But I think that there is a metaphor that is completely different in this film than what we saw in It Follows. This is about emotional intimacy, not physical intimacy, and the entity is set loose by those in authority, the people that want to protect these kids from their queer relationships, or in my mind, punish them for those relationships. This isn't a movie that leans as much into the horror genre as It Follows. It's very much about this relationship with some very well executed horror elements. And I understand why that label is kind of attached to this film, because it's an easy way to sell the movie. But I also sort of think that it's not a accurate way to sell the film, and kind of undercuts a lot of the depth that the film has. The first thing I loved about this movie is the sense of paranoia, because after Ryan and Naeem have gone through this ceremony, through any given scene in the rest of the film, when you see either one of them through the eyes of the other one, you don't know, is it really Ryan? Is it really Naeem? Or is this the entity? Which puts you in the shoes of the characters, because they don't know what to believe either. And that was the intention of this ceremony. It was to stop them from sharing intimacy with somebody that their parents and elders have decided is destructive to them. And that's really what the movie relies on for its effectiveness. It's not about jump scares, although there is one that is really, really well executed. It's about this feeling of dread that you feel throughout the entire film. And this movie could have been structured around any kind of romantic relationship, but I think that there's a reason why it is effective as specifically a queer horror film about two high school kids who still live at home. Naeem's mother sort of justifies this whole thing as protecting her son because of what society thinks about queer relationships and about this relationship that he has with Ryan. But in his eyes, it's the ultimate punishment. As a metaphor for conversion therapy, I think that it's pretty obvious, but it's something that could only specifically be about these characters and about this relationship, and it feeds into that sort of primal fear of losing control over your own life, of the adults in your life, the people that are supposed to be the ones that are protecting you, instead taking actions that are harming you and being completely deaf to your protests and saying that this is actually a bad thing. And I think that having this movie be about queer teenagers specifically really lends itself to telling this kind of story. And it is a really effective movie, especially for a debut film, but I don't think that it's perfect. For example, I think that there could have been more setup at the start to establish the relationship between Ryan and Naeem. The chemistry between Joe Bird and Stacey Clausen is really, really good. They play off of each other very well, and I think that that makes up for some of the shortfalls in the script as far as establishing the relationship up front. When you have two really strong actors in the lead roles like this, it can kind of paper over some things that might not be on the page by bringing those subtleties, to the surface through their performance. But I think that it could have used maybe 5 more minutes just up at the top to let us get to know these two a little bit more. And that would just deepen the horror that comes later on in the film, and also the relationship, their burgeoning relationship that's now under threat. And as I mentioned, while the effect of the metaphors in this movie is strong, they are pretty on the nose. I mean, there's not a whole lot that's subtle happening here. But again, a lot of it is in the execution, not just the setup on the page. But generally, I think that Leviticus kind of shows the constraints that you see with low-budget horror films from first-time directors, or really any kind of film from a first-time director. First of all, on the low-budget side, I think one of the reasons the movie doesn't have more material in it is because shooting costs money, and they probably cut the script down to the bare bones. And with a first-time feature writer-director, sometimes the subtlety isn't quite going to be where maybe it could be. Maybe things are a little bit too obvious. Maybe the writing could have been a little bit stronger. But this is a good movie. It is well acted. It has a powerful message. It features great cinematography from Tyson Perkins. And it is a tight sub-90-minute horror thriller that packs in some scares and some truly creepy moments. This is the kind of movie that film festivals are made for. It's a platform to showcase work from young directors that allows that work to then be seen by studios so they can platform it even further and allow for the development of talent like this. This isn't a movie that's just good for a first movie. This is actually a good movie that's also a first movie. And if you are a fan of the horror genre, then I think that you're going to enjoy this movie. I don't know how long it's going to be in theaters. That's another reason why I wanted to make this video this weekend, because in a crowded summer movie season, a non-major release like this isn't guaranteed screens beyond the first weekend. So if you're interested in this movie, I would say take the chance this week to see it, because you might not have the chance next week. And on my personal rating scale, I'm giving Leviticus a rating of it's good. It's what I thought about the movie at Sundance. It's confirmed by seeing it a second time earlier today. And in order to get a little deeper into the film, I want to go into some spoiler talk. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to know what happens in it, you can tune out now, maybe come back after you've seen the film. If you have seen the movie and you want to hear my thoughts further, let's move on. All right, so as I mentioned, I think the relationship between Ryan and Naim in the movie is really what makes it work, and a lot of that is Joe Bird and Stacey Clausen. That conversation that the two of them have when Naim is talking about running away and Ryan says, well, if you run away, this thing's still going to be there, and it's just going to take the form of something else, and I don't want it to look like some other dickhead, I think is what he said. I want it to look like you. I mean, that is an acknowledgement of the sheer terror that both of them are facing, but it's also a really sweet sentiment. And I think that that's where the writing in the film works at its best, in the specifics and in the relationship between the two of them. And it's really well acted by the two leads in the film. I've also seen some people kind of laughing at the fact that Joe Bird plays one of the two main characters, and the character's name is Naim. N-A-I-M. So I actually looked up what name actually means, and it is a word that comes from an Arabic root, and it means, depending on the context, bliss or comfort or something along those lines. So it is a little too cutesy. I mean, again, I think maybe a non-first-time screenwriter might have picked a different name for Naim, but it makes sense in the context of the story, and it fits his role. The idea that he is the bliss, he is the comfort, he is the home for Ryan, and that's what so much of the movie revolves around. There's also something that I was expecting at the end of the film that we didn't get, and that is a continuation of a trope or a cliche or whatever you want to call it that has often been called bury your gaze. I know that it is much more on the TV side than the movie side, but it does also extend in the film, and it's basically something that's been noticed where many times when you see a queer relationship on television or in the movies, it has a tragic end. Even if it is a very deep, believable, meaningful relationship, it still ends poorly. One or both of them will die, or they'll be separated tragically forever. And it happens so often, like I said, that it has become a trope. And I was expecting something like this at the end of the film, particularly when Ryan and Naim are in that old factory and Naim is fighting what turns out to be the entity, but we see Ryan at the window right at the end of that scene. I thought, okay, that's where it is. This is the sad, tragic irony of the movie, is he's fighting off this person that he doesn't believe is the person he loves, and then it looks like he's won, but it actually really is him. So it's going to be this very bittersweet ending where he wins, but he also loses. But it didn't turn out that way. It was actually the entity. And then we get the end of the movie where they get on the bus together, and it's a very sweet moment. They're leaving town. Naim sees the entity watching him as they leave town. So it doesn't feel cliche. It doesn't feel trite. It doesn't feel overly happy, but these characters do end up together. They do escape this little town that sort of inflicted this thing upon them. And it was much more uplifting than I was expecting from a queer horror movie, or honestly, even from a horror movie. Most horror movies, I would say, or a good majority of them, especially if you want to put it into this sort of category of elevated horror, if you will, have downer endings. And that's not what we got with this. And I think it works with the story they're telling, because I never get the sense that the movie or the filmmaker didn't want them to be together. It is about finding strength and comfort with the person you love. And by denying them, I just don't think the movie would have had as much of an impact. It would have had a different kind of impact, but not the same kind of impact. And I like to see a movie that has these kinds of themes that doesn't end in tragedy, that actually ends with these characters overcoming some of the difficulties that they've been facing, but with that sort of tinge at the end that they still have more in their future. I also like the character of Name's mom, who is played by Mia Wasikowska. She and the church members are definitely the antagonists in the film, probably more so than the entity itself. But her character, I think, is more interesting. I think that she genuinely believes that what she's doing is protecting her child. There's hints and statements made throughout the film that the family has experienced loss already. And she said, no, I did this because you need to be afraid, because you need to be afraid to survive. And I think it speaks to the generational difference that often crops up between not just gay teens and their parents, but teens and their parents. And the idea of, I'm going to take actions that are negative for you because I know better than you, and you're going to thank me for it because you're going to be safe, when in reality, it's the most destructive action you can take. And it adds that extra dimension to her character where no matter what Name says, she can't be swayed from her course of action. So in making her motivation more unshakable, it actually makes her character more complicated. There isn't this, I saw the light moment where she realizes, oh my gosh, everything I did was wrong. No, she just gets abandoned. Name runs away and we never see her again. It's keeping the focus on Name and not trying to broaden it into this bigger family drama. It really is about these two and them trying to navigate out of this situation, and the acknowledgement that they're not going to change the people that have sort of inflicted this upon them, this entity. They are just going to have to be who they are and escape from that situation. That's not ideally the action they would have to take, but I think it matches the reality of what so many, especially queer teens, have to do in towns like this or in situations like this, where they just have to escape in order to survive, in order to be with who they want to be with. And a lot of this extends to other characters in the movie, like the preacher's daughter, who you think would be an ally to Name and to Ryan because she has been through something very similar. She knows people who have been inflicted with this entity, and yet she ends up betraying them because her anger is directed towards the only people that she can really fight. She can't fight the system. She can't fight the town. She can't fight her parents, or at least she thinks it's futile. So she turns on the only people that she can. There's also one other person who we know is being stalked by the entity and survives, who's the girl who has isolated herself in plain sight and just stays at the hospital all the time around people, has completely removed herself from anything resembling a normal life. And again, if you take it away from the specific circumstances in this movie to the metaphorical level, I think these are all challenges that LGBT on the only people that she can. Daughter, who you think would be an ally to Name and to Ryan because she has been through something very similar. She knows people who have been inflicted with this entity, and yet she ends up betraying them because her anger is directed towards the only people that she can really fight. She can't fight the system. She can't fight the town. She can't fight her parents, or at least she thinks it's futile. So she turns on the only people that she can. There's also one other person who we know is being stalked by the entity and survives, who's the girl who has isolated herself in plain sight and just stays at the hospital all the time around people, has completely removed herself from anything resembling a normal time around, who's the girl who has isolated herself in plain sight and just stays at the hospital all the time around people, has completely removed herself from anything resembling a normal life. And again, if you take it away from the specific circumstances in this movie to the metaphorical level, I think these are all challenges that LGBTQ plus teens face. The idea of not being able to rely on people in authority because they're taking these destructive actions in the name of protecting them, whether that is an actual motivation or not. They often can't rely on other people in the LGBTQ plus community because some of them have just sort of given up and said, okay, this is the system I've been given. I'm going to operate under this system. Or some of them have removed themselves entirely because they're just tired of fighting. And then you have other characters in the film, like the bullies that the preacher's daughter takes them to, that just don't like queer people. don't like that they're gay teens, and you're going to face that sort of persecution. And so all of these circumstances reflect not just what situation the characters in this movie are in, but also act as a mirror. And the director of the film has said many times that this is intentional, of real issues that LGBTQ plus teens face, not just in Australia, but around the world. And that's why I think it works. Like I said, I think sometimes the metaphors are a little too on the nose, but I think that the storytelling is sound and the character work is sound. And on top of all that, I think it also works as a horror movie. I mentioned the one jump scare in the film, and if you've seen the movie, I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. It's the, I guess, dream sequence where he's in bed and Ryan all of a sudden pops up. That was, the scare itself seemed like it might have been a little different between Sundance and the theatrical release. I could be wrong though, because the first time I saw it, I literally went back in I tried to climb up the back of my seat, which is rare. If you know me, you know that I don't love jump scares. I think when they're employed well, then they're effective. But I knew that there was one coming in that scene the first time I saw it, and I still wasn't prepared for it. It was such a well executed scare, and the fact that the movie wasn't full of other needless jump scares, I think made that one even more effective. So on top of all the metaphorical stuff and mirroring real life and the real experiences of gay teens and LGBTQ plus teens out there, on top of all of that, I think it actually also works as a horror movie. The atmosphere throughout is creepy. The Ryan entity just popping up that shot where he walks around the bus, I thought was super creepy. Or those scenes where you don't know who's really who. That worked on a horror level apart from any kind of societal metaphor going on with the rest of the film, and that's another reason why I think this movie is good. So as I said, is it a perfect film? Absolutely not. But I love when you can look at a movie and not just dissect the performances, the craft, the camera work, etc., but you can dig down into the story. You can dig down into the metaphors. You can think about, okay, what did this scene mean? What did that scene mean? And it still gives you interesting things to chew on. It's not as, I'm not going to put it up there with Hereditary, because that's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think it's a better movie than this one. But it's a movie like that where ever since I saw it back in January, I've thought back on it on specific scenes. This is why I wanted to give the film some extended time here on the channel, because there are really only a handful of movies every year that actually have me thinking about them days or weeks or months after I've seen them. And this was one of them, because of the depth of the acting and because of just how genuine it felt. And if you've seen it, even if it's not a whole lot of you, but if you've seen it and you want to see people talking about it, I want to be one of those places where you can talk about these small little horror films as well as the big superhero movies like we're going to talk about next week. So those are my thoughts on Leviticus. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned. Tomorrow I will have my weekly box office breakdown where we talk about the huge box office of Toy Story 5 and probably the comparatively small box office of this film. Plus next week I've got my review of Supergirl and all bunch of stuff. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when I upload a new video. But most of all, thank you for spending time watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.
Let's talk about this horror film, Leviticus. This film is, well, it's just so you know, going in, it's gay. It's about two closeted gay teens, and they're attracted to each other.
I can tell.
Yes. They're Ryan, played by Stacey Clausen, and Name, played by Joe Bird. It's an Australian story set in Australia. Ryan and Name are having a secret affair because they both go to the same church and same high school, kind of ignore each other in high school, but they have secret rendezvous in which they wrestle and occasionally make out. And it gets gets heated at times.
69.
When Name finds Ryan with another boy, he feels betrayed that he was cheated on, and then he reports to the church he saw Ryan kissing another boy, and they do a ceremony. They take the boys and they're gonna do a a conversion therapy on them, a little ceremony that puts them into like an epileptic fit. And then one of the other boys is killed in a conversionally strange way. What therapy on them, a little ceremony. Name is approached by Ryan. He sees his friend who he's still attracted to, even though he feels guilt from exposing him to the church. And a strange entity takes the form of Ryan and tries to kill Name. So it's almost a little bit like the movie It Follows. So it's shades of it or tones in the same way the tone. So you'll see the person you are most into, the person you most desire, take on the form of that other person and then try to kill you. So every time Name and Ryan see each other, they're like attracted, but they're like, are you the entity trying to kill me? Or are you the real person? And that's basically what happens in this movie. Honestly, I like this a lot more than I thought. Yes, it's a gay story. That might turn off some people. It's not too explicit. It's just what I like about it too is most horror is based on female lead characters, or what they call the cliche of the final girl. There's no final girl in this because there are no girls in this. I mean, we see Name's mom and there are other female characters, but they're not major characters at all. So you're constantly left with what's going to happen. How is this entity doing this? It's a mystery. And I will say movie is short. It's 90 minutes. I liked it better than I thought. I saw a trailer at CinemaCon. I was like, I don't know if I care about this. I only found that sometimes the Australian accents are so thick, I couldn't understand what the people were saying. I wished there were subtitles. And Name as the lead character is Naim. I was like, the character's name in the movie is Name. That's his character. It must be an Australian thing.
I think you need an accent when you say it.
Yes, I'm not good at that. I'm not even going to try. But look, if you're into horror, if you like the movie It Follows, if you like films that have like a religious subtext and spiritual demons, I actually would recommend it. So a bare recommend, okay. but not a like rush to the theater. You can catch it on streaming or whatnot. I will say that like the gore, there's some really good gore effects. Again, not going to ruin anything. So can't believe it. Like you, Alan, who saw Pillion and recommended the gay romance. I'm recommend the gay horror film Leviticus.
It's funny, the gay movies that everyone wanted us to see, we actually kind of liked.
Let's go to your comments.
No, I gotta say, I'm proud of you for actually going through and watching this.
All I can say is
you weaseled out a Pillion.
No, all I can say is promises kept. Promises kept. I promised I would see a gay horror film, and dang it, I saw a gay horror film.
You promised you would see Pillion, but you didn't.
I failed.
No, I'll say what people. I can do it. It's fine. I don't know if I want to watch Cody. I don't want to watch him. He takes too long. Sorry. He takes too long. I want to watch him. We don't need a spoiler review, you know? We don't.
Totally coincidentally, they look.
Gotta let buff a bit. Damn.
look like Shane and Ilya in Heated Rivalry.
Heated Rivalry. I don't think I've ever seen that. I'm on the goddamn phone.
It was a big hit at Sundance, and now it's making its way into theaters just in time for Pride Month. The Australian queer horror film Leviticus.
You see anything that looks like me? Don't go near it.
Yeah, this is pretty great. I think all the buzz around it is very justified. This is the feature filmmaking debut from writer-director Adrian Chiarella. It is set in kind of a middle of nowhere mill town, really rich sense of place as far as like the decaying houses, and there's nothing to do, but there's this mill at the center of it that is also abandoned, and that seems to hold a lot of foreboding here. It focuses on these two high school kids, probably about 16, 17 years old. Name, who is new to town, played by Joe Bird, and Ryan, played by Stacey Clausen. And Ryan is like handsome and confident and kind of swaggering, and Name is a little shyer, a little nerdy, but they start to hang out with each other and have this like undeniable chemistry with each other. And then one day just start making out with each other, and it's just intense from there. There's another kid in town who also is part of the mix of this as well. There's a very heavy sense of like Christianity, like a very judgy kind of Christianity prevailing throughout.
It's like an evangelical community, you know.
It is. And that's almost like the only thing that's holding them together, right? Because the industry is not, and there's not a lot of commerce, there's not a lot of personality to this place, but they all cling to this very insular and very judgy and very conservative kind of evangelicalism.
Like Name's mom, played by Mia Wasikowska, moved them to town because of this church. And that, which is the only thing that would bring anybody to this place, because you're right. Otherwise it's economically devastated.
Yeah. Mia Wasikowska has been around for so long now that she's now playing other teenagers' moms.
Yes. Yes, we've reached that point in the Earth's progress.
Yeah. She gives terrible parenting advice. She's a terrible mom.
Yes, she is.
I enjoy feeling judgy and smug and superior. Never say these things to my son. Anyway, so it's about the two of them and how when it gets out that they are hooking up with each other, and then there's another boy involved. The main preacher in town, the pastor, who is the father of one of these boys, brings in this guy to do this ritual on them. And it's essentially like a conversion therapy, sort of a supernatural kind of conversion therapy.
Yes.
You notice how they're all saying that one word, conversion therapy? These are not their words. Like, who started using that word? I wouldn't have used that word, conversion therapy. I go to see movies all the time. And when I make my reviews, I don't use certain words. They're doing that so that the algorithm can push their video.
Result being that that the person that you desire most ends up coming after you.
Well, an entity comes after you, and it takes the form of the person you desire most. And so it's sort of like, it's a what's the thing like in Clockwork Orange, that blank therapy where they make you not want the idea is that you're going to reject
repulsion,
something.
Repulsion.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it's harrowing. The actual ceremony that they're forced to undergo is quite startling. And so it's how they navigate just being in this town, this small town where, you know, they see each other all the time, but then mistrust whether the person they're seeing is truly that other person, or it's enigma, this vision, whatever it is, and how that gets increasingly terrifying and violent. I thought this was really suspenseful and really finds a lot of avenues through its central premise here. It could have just been like one thing, but there are fascinating kind of wrinkles and variables involved here. I never knew where it was going. Both young actors are great in it individually and like very specifically drawn, but you also believe that chemistry that brings them together. Totally coincidentally, they look like Shane and Ilya in Heated Rivalry. It's a total coincidence. I read an article.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
I mean, the blonde curly hair, the more confident guy with the cheekbones and the blue eyes, and the kind of shyer guy has like dark hair. And anyway, they look a lot like them.
I'll allow it.
It's a coincidence. Thank you. Jen Yamato, our good friend Jen Yamato, did an article with Adrian Chiarella and with the actors here, and he happened to see Heated Rivalry during post-production. So
and he was like,
"Oh man, totally coincidental." I've seen the comparison that it's like It Follows meets Heated Rivalry, and that feels like an oversimplification because it's not quite the It Follows formula, but there is like a supernatural kind of connection that binds people in horrifying ways. So I thought this was so well done, rich sense of place. Mia Wasikowska is
real, man.
Totally annoying in this movie, which is the thing she's supposed to be.
Yeah, she understood the part. I mean, I think the It Follows comparison is a valid one because that movie is also sort of about metaphors about sexuality, and about what horror very often will use like the monster to substitute for this social crisis or this. Whatever it is, that they're making the movie about. And so I think the way that this movie terrorizes its characters by putting them through essentially what is conversion therapy is a very valid metaphor because conversion therapy, can and will fuck you up. Like it is reckless and terrible. And so I think that's a great idea to build a movie from that. But you're right, it's not just the central idea. It is the sort of granular stuff about these characters, about this town. There's an oddly funny moment where like one of them realizes he'll be safe if he's not alone. And so he goes to like the one sort of dinery place in town and the woman behind the counter is like, we're closing in 10 minutes. Like she's just could not be more bored, and he's freaking out. And then she's like, we're closing in 9 minutes, I
love that scene. Her delivery is perfect. So deadpan.
So they find a lot of different kind of tones to play with among all of that. And, I think this movie is great. And, that it's good and it's effective because a bunch of assholes have come out of the woodwork to give it 1 ratings on IMDb when I'm sure they haven't seen it.
No. Yes. What are they afraid of?
Exactly. So I think this movie's great and it is fitting into a lot of cool sort of horror traditions or not traditions, but waves that are happening right now. It is a film, I think, along the lines of Backrooms in terms of not going full bore on the, gore or the whatever, but it's about the mood and the tone and the sort of subtle stuff that you find that kind of like there's a moment in this movie that should be sweetly romantic but you keep waiting for it to turn into something else. And so it's just tense,
You're on edge.
And then of course also Joe Bird was in, Talk to Me, and so this is yet another kind of cool, the new Australian wave of horror films that's happening right now as well. So I hope people check this out. It is, it's a great horror movie. It's a great queer film and it's a great coming of age movie.
Yeah. Cause a lot of it is like them figuring out who they are.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out who they are within the challenge and the threat of this entity,
and so curse that's been placed upon them.
There's that much more going on. And so, and Chiarella really sets the tone efficiently off the top with the opening scene, what happens there, which gives you a little kind of like mysterious taste of what's to come and great kind of, very traditional horror movie fashion, the way that he like pushes in to show you, but not totally show you what is happening here. So that was really well done from the top.
It is horrifying, but there is also hope for these characters. So I appreciated that a lot.
And moments of beauty. You know, like within the squalor of this place, there are moments where like the light is streaking through the broken windows of this abandoned mill while they're having a quiet moment together. Like it's not all doom and gloom. There's moments, as you say, moments of hope and beauty here too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. What's your number on Leviticus?
I'd say a 9. I really enjoyed this a lot.
I'll say 8.5. It's really good. So Leviticus is out there in theaters. You've got a lot of choices for queer films this weekend, but this would be a good one.
So, a bit of housekeeping. It's that time once again, as some of you know, where your boy gets himself a good old-fashioned sinus infection. I get a couple every couple of
You're not my boy, mate.
months. I've inherited my father's crook sinus, so thanks for that, Dad. So excuse if my eyes look watery or bloodshot at some point. I'm not high. I wish I was. Now, also, can I just start off by saying how much I love hearing magpies in Australian films? I don't know why. Hearing a magpie warble, or even like a cocky screaming, or a galah, or a corella screaming, it just warms my Aussie heart. I've had a pretty good run lately with Aussie horror, like going back a couple of years to Talk to Me. So much so, we have an actor featuring front and center. Very pivotal scene, actually, in Talk to Me. Then obviously the Raka Raka Boys followed up with Bring Her Back. We've also had Together, and I know technically the two leads in that film are American, but it was made by an Aussie and is made here in Australia, which is very cool. So this particular film was actually filmed down in Victoria, in Geelong and Ballarat. I'm going to get to that because it plays a very big part of this film, the aesthetic of this film, and the feel and tone of this film. And I put it in the thumbnail, like, you know, like depressing or bleak, and that plays a very big part in it. Leviticus sounds like a South African surname, and I can attest to that because my wife is South African. Like, hey, how's it, Leo Leviticus? Shame, man. If my wife were here right now, she'd be like, fucking idiot. So this film is written and directed by Adrian Chiarella. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So in the leads, we've got Joe Bird and Stacey Clausen, who play Name and Ryan. Two high school kids fall in love, and then after that, something happens within their belief system, within their church community, where something is following them. An entity is following them that takes on the form of the other one that they're attracted to. So this entity essentially takes the form of who you most desire. And at the moment, that's been a very big thing with the recent release of Curry Barker's Obsession. So sort of in the same ballpark, but there are different rules this time around. A lot of religious rules as well, a lot of religious undertones. And then it's that great little thing of who do you believe's who? Is this the real person? Is this the entity? Are you losing your mind? Stuff like that. And for the most part, I really enjoyed this film. Like, it's a very, very slow burn, like a psychological slow burn. This isn't a slash and dash. There are moments of really intense gore and violence, but they're few and far between. But I still think that worked quite some because you're more or less in it because of the slow burn, the psychological breakdown of these characters and what's going on in their town. So the town they're in is that stereotypical industrial one-horse town where a lot of people just do not leave. They are born there and they die there. And going back to this film being shot in Geelong and Ballarat in Victoria, I can attest to certain parts of those towns being quite old. I wouldn't say depressing, but time has definitely forgotten them because I have not filmed one, not two, but 3 Amity Affliction music videos back to back there. And the areas that we filmed in, yeah, time had definitely forgotten them. And that is the aesthetic of this town that they've created. Well, not created, but they're filming in for Leviticus. And I think that plays a massive part in this film. It's that bleak, depressing, claustrophobic, there's just no way out of this. When everyone has turned their back on you just because of your feelings, because of following your heart, like your belief system, the church system has turned their back on you. And it gets to the point where your family turns their back on you and you have no one else but the other person who you care for, but you don't know if it's really them or this entity, which is just that great little hook right there. Now, this film does not rely on jump scares at all. It more or less just slowly crawls under your skin. The film feels like an allegory for the struggles that a lot of gay people unfortunately face to this day. Like, things have progressed a bit, but, now and then you hear some shock and horror stories, and this is one of them, even though it's a fictional one. Now, I think Joe Bird, Stacey Clawson, they deliver some brilliant performances, especially Joe Bird, and I think because of his performance, especially that one pivotal scene in Talk to Me where he becomes possessed. He knows how to have that restraint on his face, but at the same time, his mind is going a million miles an hour, if that makes sense. And that can be a very hard thing for an actor to do. But I think that the pair of them, they work so well together, and the supporting cast as well, even though some of them are absolute pieces of shit. And that's what they're going for, obviously. And I think, again, just added with the claustrophobic feel of the town and not getting out of there, and isn't one of those things where you just jump on a bus and just keep going and never return. Now, going back to the slow burn approach, when it all comes to a head in the climax of the film, I think it stuck the landing pretty well. And one thing with Australian horror, just Australian films in general, we always know how to have a good hook or a good plot twist at the end, and that's what I was waiting for. It didn't necessarily have a massive plot twist at the end. There are certain things that are left up to your own interpretation, which is great, again, because it makes for good discourse. But again, maybe I was just relying too much on a hook being needed for this film, but I don't think it necessarily needed a hook. Whether or not you take it as a happy ending, a bleak ending, or as Marge says,
It's an ending, that's enough.
So guys, overall, I had a pretty good time with Leviticus. It's very different. It goes against the grain, but at the same time, it's that classic slow burn, psychological, gets under your skin. When the gore happens, but you got some great performances. The setting as well. The setting is horrific in itself. And it's not because something violent is going on up on screen. It's just that idea of being trapped in this depressing little house, the use of a lot of harsh brown, amber lights to kind of give you that old vintage retro feel. But I think just having all those elements working together, it just gets under your skin, makes you just feel icky. And when people are against you, when your belief system's against you, when your family's against you, and then at the front of it, you have this entity coming after you that takes on the form of the person you pretty much care most about. Like, it's pretty fucked up, man. And with that, I'm going to be giving Leviticus 3.25 out of 5. So guys, if you do check out Leviticus, drop a comment below, let me know your thoughts, let me know your theories. I'm pretty sure this is getting a release in the States. I did check this morning. I think it comes out tomorrow in the United States, because tomorrow's Friday and that's going to be your Thursday. So let me know your thoughts down below, especially that atmosphere, that setting, as Dave McRae says, that mood and atmosphere. I think choosing certain parts of Ballarat and Geelong was very, very wise. Just that industrial mill, like founded town where a lot of people just are born there and die there. It gets under your skin, man. Check out my review for Toy Story 5, either coming later tonight or tomorrow morning. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Yep, this is Toy Story 5. I have a lot more reviews about this. Should we start it? What's this video? Alright then, I'm gonna start Toy Story.
Man, this movie's BS. Toy Story 5, all trying to make me cry in there. I mean, not that I cried. Of course not. No, it's man tears. Totally different. In fact, it wasn't even man tears. It was allergy season. Going pretty strong there in the auditorium.
Man,
Toy Story 5. So Toy Story 5 is the 5th Toy Story movie, if you couldn't tell by the title. Which of course raises the question, did we really need this? So this continues the saga of Bonnie being the owner of the toys, the owner of the sentient beings. Would that be the term? She is the caretaker of the toys. However, there's a new player in town, digital technology. That would be the lily pad for this movie, which is like an iPad, but what you call a lily pad when there's a legal barrier keeping you from having an iPad in your movie. Toys feel threatened. Bonnie's social life is threatened. We have an adventure on our hands. An adventure that, yeah, I really liked it. What I like about this is this kind of does feel like it does have that remake-will energy here. The sequel that's pretty far into the franchise, pretty long after the first movie dropped. It's been about 30 years. Nope, I was wrong. 31. To be fair, that is still about 30, rounded down. All right, after filming this, I'm going to Instacart myself some tapioca pudding and a case of Ensure. That hurt. What I liked about it is it did have that original conflict of the original Toy Story, but in a new decade, a new generation, a new century, really. Instead of Andy's older toys feeling threatened by the new cool 90s action figure, it's all the toys, including but not limited to the cool 90s action figure, being threatened by the new cool thing, the lily pad. That's not just a toy, and Woody says that in the trailer. Toys are for play, but this thing is... it's everything. And it really does play that up. Yeah, there are games for kids to play, but it's a doorway into social media. It's a doorway into friend circles. With toys, if you don't have the new cool toy, that's fine. You go to your friend who does have the new cool toy. And you all gush about the new cool toy together. That's how it was. Now, if Bonnie doesn't have this not iPad, she's not actually a part of the friend circle. And I like the lesson/cautionary tale there of, yeah, but the lesson of this movie must be how my parents felt when video game consoles popped on the scene. That feeling of you're not playing with friends, you're on a thing, it's different. And it's a very relatable story. Okay, not gonna bury the lead. Let's just on a thing. Consoles popped on the scene. That feeling of you're not playing with friends, you're on a thing, it's friend circle. And I like the lesson/cautionary tale there of, yeah, but the lesson of this movie must be how my parents felt when video game consoles popped on the scene. That feeling of you're not playing with friends, you're on a thing, it's different. And it's a very relatable story. Okay, not gonna bury the lead. Let's just get it out there. You may have heard that Jessie is the main character in this movie, not Woody and Buzz, and that's totally true. But it does make sense for the movie and what it's going for. Also, it doesn't feel like a hit. Woody and Buzz were largely tied with Andy's story, and Andy's story is done. Yeah, we love them to be the leads, and they actually do have something to do in here, but it does feel like they are support. Toy Story 5 feels like it naturally, organically went where it made sense for the story. But the emotional moments they unpack with Jessie in this movie, dude, they hit. I like that Toy Story is apparently aged with its audience, but the kids don't get left behind. But as they've always told human stories, it's never been just about, toys, and that's nostalgic. That adds to the humor and the connection with the story, but Toy Story 5 is more about parents navigating their kids growing up in an interconnected social media digital age. But it's also a fun animated adventure with toys for your kids, you know, so everybody's having a good time here. As every Toy Story movie has new characters, there are some new characters that show up here. From an earlier age of tech and toy integration for children. One of them's voiced by Conan O'Brien. I didn't know that until there's this imagination world that the toys are in. You know, when a kid's playing with the toys, it kind of shows what the toys are to the kid. We all did that, man. We had our G.I. Joes fight Ninja Turtles. It wasn't always G.I. Joe versus Ninja Turtles. In fact, when I was a kid, true story, I had a cardboard box and a paper towel tube that I stuck to the cardboard box. Ninja Turtles had a sewer base to play in because we weren't rich and the official play set was too expensive. Do what you need to survive as a kid, man, with the power of imagination. Kind of went on a tangent there, but the Conan O'Brien character had his Conan O'Brien hair in the imagination sequences, and that's when it clicked. That's what Toy Story has never lost. It's never lost that awe and that power of imagination.
Don't come back.
It does feel more threatened in this movie, and that's a point of the movie, and that makes for some solid tension there. And it had a nice lesson about the point of the power of imagination. That's what Toy Story has never lost. It's never lost that awe and that power of imagination. It does feel more threatened in this movie, and that's a point of the movie, and that makes for some solid tension there. And it had a nice lesson about, you know, the quirky kid, that maybe the quirky kid, it's okay to be a quirky kid. I mean, that's always a win. I love that. Right on. There was a thing that took a little too long to land for, or not land. It took a little too long to even see where it was going. There's a multitude of Buzz Lightyears out there on this quest, and I mean, it's the first thing you see in the movie. In fact, I thought it was a short film. I was like, oh, okay, it's the Pixar short film, because this clearly isn't Toy Story 5 yet. Are there Pixar short films beginning of... Does this still happen? No, it's a time-honored tradition. Now I can't think of it happening, but it was a critic screening. Maybe you'll get one. I didn't. But no, it's actually the movie doing its thing. And for so long, it would bounce back over to these Buzz Lightyears. And I was like, where are we going with this? And really, I'd never got an answer. I mean, it played out to be, okay, there are a bunch of MacGuffins that exist to get the job done at a point. And as it is Toy Story 5, Toy Story's been going on for a while. And every time Toy Story has a new chapter, there are new friends to pick up along the way. Friends that stay, but now they're just kind of background characters. Toy Story has had a lot of characters that have stuck around, but they feel like cameos. I like the fact that they do make the call to concentrate on the important ones for the sake of the plot that they're dealing with in the movie. I guess it's just an observation, but it is a noticeable thing. It feels like they've picked up these strays as the series has gone on. And now you'll just see a couple characters in the background. Maybe they have one line and that's it. But in the end, Toy Story 5, I thought it was great. I think it makes an argument for its own existence, the answer to the question, did we really need this? And yeah, it makes a strong case that we really did need this. More than Toy Story 4. I mean, I enjoyed 4, but 5 feels more relevant. And I like that it shows there's a place for tech even in a kid's life, but maybe in moderation. I mean, is that going to stick? Probably not, but I like the fact that they're addressing that. I mean, how many times have authors, filmmakers, stories, movies, directors addressed a thing? Technological or social dynamic, let's pump the brakes or at the very least be more aware, and we're like, that's a really good movie. Oh, hey, that looks like a good idea. It's doing what that was a cautionary tale of. Beyond that, it's a fun adventure. Parents, kids, they'll both love it. Toy Story 1 through 3 being in the conversation of one of the best cinematic trilogies of all time, let's be honest. The real question is 5 better than 4? And to me, yes, 5 is better than 4. The laughs were real, the heart was strong, or vice versa. This is worth watching and worth buying on Blu-ray. Maybe that'll be Toy Story 6. Retro gaming consoles become cool again and kind of usurp the lily pad. Can we get Mickey Rourke to voice a Sega Genesis or something? I mean, that kind of be alright. So Toy Story 5, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Or what are the greatest cinematic trilogies of all time? There's Lord of the Rings, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones. I mean, you can pick the first 3 as a trilogy in a series of 5 or 6 or whatever. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.
Fuck you, motherfucker.
You know what? I'm actually gonna continue this late. Continue this I think I did include it. It's got It does. I will continue this tomorrow, really, because I'm just tired.